Hospitals, schools, the environment. Lots of things that affect us all are discussed and decided in Parliament. But what is Parliament, and how did it all begin? Parliament has been around for hundreds of years and has changed many times. Way back in 1215, King John put his seal on Magna Carta and agreed to a list of 63 rules set out by a group of barons. These were important landowners who advised the king. This meant that for the first time no one, not even the king, could break the law of the land. 50 years later, Simon de Montfort, for the first time, invited representatives of the towns and shires to his 1265 Parliament. From this point onwards, the power to make decisions for the nation passed, over time, from the king or queen to Parliament. You've probably heard of the government. The government's job is to run the country. Parliament's job is to check and challenge what the government does. Let's take a closer look at what happens in Parliament today. Parliament is made up of three parts: the House of Commons, the House of Lords, and the King or Queen, known as the monarch. The House of Commons chamber is where important topics are debated, laws are discussed, and where members of Parliament, MPs, can keep an eye on the work of the government. There are 650 MPs, and each one represents an area of the United Kingdom. These areas are called constituencies. Most MPs belong to a political party, which is a group of people with similar views on how the country should be run. And some MPs are independent, which means they aren't part of any party. MPs are voted for by the people in their constituency at general elections. The leader of the party that wins the election becomes the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister and their party run the country, and are called the government. Parties not in power are known as the opposition, and they take a leading role in checking and challenging the ideas of government through debates in the chamber. At the head of the House sits the Speaker. It's their job to make sure debates are kept in order. Sometimes they can get very lively. The second part of Parliament is the House of Lords, and it shares the job of making laws with the House of Commons. There are around 800 members, and most are life peers. Life peers are chosen for their knowledge and experience, so they can use their special skills to look carefully at new laws. Anyone, including you, can nominate somebody to be a life peer. Successful nominations are then recommended by the Prime Minister and approved by the monarch. Once approved, you become a lord if you're a man, or a baroness if you're a woman, and you are then a member of the House of Lords, a peer for the rest of your life. In the House of Lords, there is also a small group of hereditary peers who have had their position passed on to them by their family, and some bishops. The third part of Parliament is the monarch. This role is mainly ceremonial these days. They meet the Prime Minister once a week to hear what's going on in Parliament, and sign every new law. Both the House of Commons and the House of Lords share the job of making laws. But where do laws come from in the first place? A law is a rule we've all agreed to live by. Laws help everyone understand what we must and must not do. Ideas for new laws are called bills. They can be suggested by lots of different people, including political parties and campaign groups. A bill can begin in the House of Commons or the House of Lords. MPs and Lords always check bills very carefully, because making and changing laws affects everyone in the country. They do this by holding debates in each house, where they can discuss what they agree and disagree with in the bill and suggest changes. Sometimes a bill can go backwards and forwards between the two houses lots of times. This is called parliamentary ping-pong. Once the two houses agree, then it's the monarch's turn. It's their job to formally agree the bill. This makes it an Act of Parliament, and only then is it a law. In the UK, we live in what's called a democracy. This means we let as many people as possible have a say in how the country is run. We do this through our rights to vote in elections. For many years, lots of people in the UK fought to get the rights to vote that we have today, and now every eligible person aged 18 and over can vote. There are lots of different types of elections to vote in: general, local, and European. Let's take a closer look at how members of Parliament, MPs, are voted into the House of Commons in the general election. General elections take place in the UK usually once every 5 years. Voting takes place on one day, called polling day. People go to polling stations set up across the country. They choose who they want to vote for from a list of candidates by putting a cross next to the name of the person they've chosen. The candidate with the most votes then becomes the MP for that area, called a constituency. OK, but how would I know who to vote for? Before elections, candidates need to campaign to try to get people to vote for them. Campaigning can involve handing out leaflets to explain their ideas, speaking in public discussions, talking to people by visiting houses door to door, and party political broadcasts on TV. Parties with candidates standing for election also write a list of everything they want to do if they win. This is called a manifesto. Once they've won an election, an MP represents all their constituents, including those who didn't vote or voted for someone else. The party with the most elected MPs forms the government, and their leader becomes the Prime Minister. If no one party wins the election, then this is called a hung parliament. If this happens, two or more parties might agree to join together to form what is known as a coalition government. One way to have a say in how the country is run is to use your vote. You have to be 18 or over to vote in general elections, and you can register from the age of 16. But whatever your age, there are loads of other ways to get involved and have your voice heard. If there's something you feel strongly about in your local area, or even something that affects people across the UK, let Parliament know. You can contact your local Member of Parliament, MP, or any Lord by letter, phone or email to talk about something that's important to you. Sometimes there's power in numbers. To have your say, you could start a petition for a cause that interests you and get other people signing up to agree. Or if you're really passionate about something, you could join a campaign group. These groups use lots of different ways to have their say, from lobbying MPs, which means asking them to support their cause, to holding peaceful protests, all to help bring about change. And don't forget, you can get your voice heard in school too. Many schools have school councils to give students the chance to have a say on how their school is run, a bit like a parliament for school. So, Parliament sits at the heart of UK democracy, discussing the big topics of the day, making laws and keeping the government in check. And for democracy to really work, we all have to be involved. What will you do?